cultural foundation Izolyatsia was originally a platform for artists in Donetsk to inspire social development in the industrial heartlands of East Ukraine. But in June last year, combined Russian-separatist forces seized their territory, forcing them to flee, and many of their artworks left behind were destroyed. But today, the group has launched new projects outside of their original homeland. And here to talk about those initiatives and the organization's future plans is Oleksandr Vynogradov. He is from Izolyatsia. So, Oleksandr, thank you very much for coming into Viewpoint.
Thank you for the invitation.
So, for people who don't know about your art group, can you tell us a bit more about it?
Sure. Well, Izolyatsia started in 2010. In Donetsk, actually at the outskirts of Donetsk, on the territory of the former insulation materials plant, which is why we have this name Izolyatsia. And it was a cultural platform, it still is a cultural platform. We call it Platform for Cultural Change. And we actually have three directions of our activities. First of all, these are the art projects, site-specific art projects. Secondly, these are educational projects. We have a lot of lectures, master classes, workshops. And the third direction are well, we try to promote and we try to support creative industries in Ukraine because they are still pretty small and they need help. So these are three main directions, and of course after the exile in 2014, when we were forced out of Donetsk, we moved to Kyiv. We are now based on the territory of the shipyards, Kyiv shipyards on Podil. But still, we try to do as much as we can for the eastern Ukraine, and so we carry out many projects on the borderline, actually, on the front line. We have a lot of projects in Mariupol, also in Kramatorsk and Slavyansk. We have a series of events which is called Zmina. And these are, basically all these three directions are represented there. These are cultural events, these are film screenings, lectures,
so it's a lot of
trainings.
Stuff that you're doing there. And why do you think that your group actually was forced to flee Donetsk? What was it about the artwork that didn't sit well with these occupying forces?
Well, definitely our platform was promoting diversity and freedom of speech, freedom of points of view, and we had really a lot of people with different points of view on the situation in Ukraine. And of course, the new power in Donetsk, the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, they cannot tolerate other points of view. And so, of course, it was inevitable for them to come to our territory. But apart from that, I think there was a material interest in this seizure because, well, basically, most of the metal artworks, metal installations that were on the territory of Izolyatsia, they were sold as scrap metal. Also, the territory of the plant is now used as a training base for the
it's
fighters.
A big territory, as far as I remember reading.
Yeah, it's a huge territory, and it is used. Well, it's now it's a multi-purpose territory. It's a training base. It's a arms depot, and it's also a place where they hold hostages. And there have been reports of torture on the territory of Izolyatsia.
Yeah, okay. And what about your artwork itself? So was it statues and paintings that actually reflected Donetsk itself, the industrial history of the region?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of works, of course. There were many international art residencies held on the territory of Izolyatsia, so different artists from different countries, they presented their reflections on the on the territory, on Donetsk, on Ukraine in general. These were mainly installations, so it was all about in contemporary art. There were some paintings, there were sculptures.
That must have been really interesting to get this point of view from outside, what people were thinking of Donetsk, because outside of Ukraine, many people don't really know about Donetsk itself. So were you surprised by what they did know or what they didn't know about the region?
Well, people probably knew something about the Soviet heritage. They knew something about industry, but of course they didn't know a lot of things about cultural life in Donetsk, so they were mainly very surprised to find that there is this Izolyatsia foundation in Donetsk, and they were pretty excited about their works.
And before the occupation, what was the cultural life in Donetsk? Was it prospering? Was it very big, or was it slowly growing?
One of the reasons why we brought this exhibition, the Georgian exhibition, Crawling Border, is because we were actually ourselves on a kind of a borderline in Donetsk. We were on the outskirts of the city, and also we were kind of on the borders of the cultural life, because well, what Izolyatsia did was pretty different. It was actually radically different from rest of the city.
So it had never been seen before in Donetsk itself?
Yeah, cultural life in Donetsk was, well, what you call a traditional cultural life in a provincial town, even though it was a big town.
What do you mean by that cultural life in the
Well, I mean, we had, there were, of course, some theaters, cinemas, and stuff like that, but we didn't have a lot of contemporary art, galleries.
So it was new for the people who were living there?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
it was something pretty new. Well, it was new even for Ukraine in general, but of course for Donetsk it was brand new. It was something very different, and we held, for example, a festival of contemporary Ukrainian literature, which was new for Donetsk, even though there is a community of Ukrainian-speaking people in Donetsk, but still it was kind of, well, a marginal event, marginal phenomenon, but
But it was an event to showcase Ukrainian literature, and it had never been seen before.
Yeah, exactly. But, well, if there are, and there have been a lot of Ukrainian-speaking writers hailing from Donbass, some pretty famous poets like Sosura or Stus, and there are still a lot of people like Zhadan who are from eastern Ukraine, and well, there are lots of voices from Donbass that say different things from what people usually think about Donbass.
Yeah, as being like pro-Russian. Is this the usual ideas that people think of when they think of Donbass? Yeah.
Exactly. People tend to think that most of the people, the majority of the people in Donbass were pro-Russian, which is why they let the invaders come without resisting. Well, it's not totally true. Because of course there are a lot of people who are pro-Russian,
but you even had the pro-European protests before the actual occupation itself.
We had a Euromaidan, we had a Euromaidan in Donetsk, and Izolyatsia supported Euromaidan in Donetsk too, but of course it was not very big. And still a lot of people were afraid. They were afraid of, I don't know, of vindicative actions from the current authorities at the time, from Yanukovych and Akhmetov, and then afterwards, they were very afraid of the reaction from the DPR.
Yeah. I have one last question to ask you about one of your members, Sergei Sakharov, who was actually captured. He continued his artwork throughout Donetsk. So can you briefly tell us about him and what happened to him?
Sergei Sakharov was well, he still is, but he used to be based in Donetsk, and he, well, since the invasion, he started a series of caricatures on the leaders of the so-called DPR, and he placed them on the streets of Donetsk.
During the night?
During the night, yes. Well, he was caught in less than a month after that. He's been tortured, and afterwards he's been released, thankfully. Now he is working, well, in different parts of Ukraine, but his recent work was his mayoral election campaign in Mariupol.
But after he was released, he actually made a series of portraits about what was his experiences.
He made this art, well, he made this installation called The House of Cards, which Izolyatsia has shown within our project Culture and Conflict, Izolyatsia in Exile. It was a pack of big cards with, again, the faces of the leaders of the DPR, and the main card, the joker, was Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
And we have put a great house of cards, which during the performance, Sakharov pushed this card of Putin,
and they all fell down, I'd imagine.
Yeah, the whole foundation.
Well, that's very interesting. Oleksandr, thank you very much for coming into Viewpoint for us. That was Oleksandr Vynogradov. He is one of the members of the Ukrainian cultural platform Izolyatsia. Now, back to the news.